Victoria grew up in a small town where the rolling hills and shady alleys created a cozy atmosphere. Their home, with its white picket fence and flowering garden, was always full of laughter and warmth. Victoria, always an energetic teenager with brown eyes and an infectious smile, spent her days playing with her younger sister Aria in the yard. The aroma of fresh cookies wafted through the air as their mother Evelyn created culinary masterpieces in the kitchen. "Children, to the table. Your favorite treats are ready," Evelyn called to them affectionately. The family often gathered around the table to share news and dreams. Their father, Bruce, gray-haired and always smiling, loved to tell stories from his childhood, reminding the girls to cherish those carefree moments, for time runs so fast. On summer evenings, Victoria and Aria would catch fireflies in the garden. Their merry laughter was illuminated by the flickering of small lights and spread through the night air. The sisters were inseparable, sharing secrets under the stars. "Will you always be there for me?" Aria asked quietly. "Always," Victoria replied with a tight hug. "We'll always be a team," Victoria said quietly as the sisters tucked into bed. Evelyn, their mom, soothed them with soft lullabies, kissed them goodnight, and wished them sweet dreams. Yet in these moments, the Cooper family found comfort and strength. The silence of a small town was once broken by an unexpected tragedy that ended their carefree life. Evelyn, the girl's mother, suddenly fell unconscious. Bruce rushed her to the hospital, the house filled with panic and fear. Victoria and Aria, hugging each other, sought comfort in their grief, and there they were, sitting in the hospital waiting room, holding hands, seeking support. "Mommy's going to be okay, isn't she?" Aria asked, her eyes full of hope. Victoria, holding back tears, nodded. "Mom's strong. She'll be fine." Oh, but fate had decided in its own way. The doctor came out to them with a sympathetic look and brought the news that shattered their world. "Your mom is gone." The doctor's words hung in the air, a heavy cloud. Bruce slumped his shoulders at the loss, and Victoria felt her heart pouring lead. "Mommy's not coming back, is she?" Aria whispered. Victoria could only nod silently, confirming the worst. At the funeral, where everyone gathered, faces flooded with tears, and accepted condolences. The fullness of the loss, Bruce spoke, and you could hear the sadness in his trembling voice. He admitted that they would miss her every day, that she was the soul of their home, the light of their lives, the Cooper house, where life had once reigned. Victoria and Aria huddled tightly together, their cheerful laughter replaced by a silence that spoke more than words. Evelyn's passing had left deep scars, the effects of which the family could not yet realize. "I'm here to help," Bruce said, but time could not heal the wounds left by her passing. 6 months after the funeral, Bruce made a statement that cast a dark shadow over the grieving family. Change was creeping up on the once happy home. "I've met someone," he confessed, dodging his daughter's glances. There was an oppressive silence in the room, broken only by the ticking of the antique clock. "Dad, is this what Mom would have wanted?" "You?" Victoria asked, feeling anxiety building in her stomach. Bruce picked his words slowly, trying to deal with his inner turmoil. "I wasn't looking for this. Life is full of surprises," he muttered. "Isabella has brought light into my life, and I hope you can understand that." Isabella, an outsider to the sisters, burst into their lives out of the blue. After her arrival, memories of Evelyn began to recede into the background, and the atmosphere in the house changed. In the days that followed, the walls seemed to begin to constrict Victoria and Aria. And one day, Victoria overheard Isabella speaking disparagingly about them on the phone with a friend. With Bruce's departure, It seemed that the girls had become a burden to him. They will disappear from our lives, Isabella says, unaware that her sisters are hearing every word. Victoria and Chloe, strangers in their own home, hold hands, seeking comfort in their bond. It's not what Mommy would have wanted, Chloe whispers, her eyes reflecting the pain of betrayal. Victoria nods, determined to protect her mother's memory. Let's not let her erase Mom from our lives, she says firmly. Together we can do this, Victoria adds confidently. The Cooper house, once filled with love, is now shrouded in tense silence. Victoria and Chloe have no idea what trials await their sisterly bond in the future. Isabella's arrival at Harper House is the beginning of a troubled chapter in their lives. The walls of their ancestral home seem cramped when a stranger enters. Isabella makes her way into their lives, and the first encounters are filled with awkwardness. Her voice, soft in front of her father and Victoria, sounds different when she doesn't know she is being heard. Bruce introduces Isabella as their new stepmother. She greets them warmly, but the sisters sense that in private she is quite different. Victoria, who overhears Isabella's conversation, discovers her true feelings. Isabella calls them a nuisance and suggests that Bruce leave them with his mother's family. Now the house, where harmony once reigned, has become an arena of silent conflict and unspoken tension. Victoria tries to communicate, but words are lost. Isabella refuses to have dinner with her sisters, talking about plans with friends. The sisters understand without words and seek solace in their own world, away from the tension that now reigns in their home. One night, Victoria shares her feelings on live TV. I miss my mom, the tears in her eyes indicate that this is the hardest moment for her. Victoria took on the role of protector, shielding her sister from the harshness of reality. She whispered words of comfort, assuring her that they would make it through. Mom's love still lived in their hearts, and they had each other. Isabella couldn't change that. As time went on, the sisters grew stronger, together weathering the storm that Isabella brought. Suddenly, the sisters realized that their troubles were only getting worse with each passing year, and the tension in the Cooper household was reaching a peak. Victoria and Chloe found themselves faced with a choice. There was already too much Isabella in the house, and it was getting hard for them to breathe. They decide to take a step toward freedom. We can't go on like this, Victoria told Chloe firmly one evening. It's time to leave. Her eyes read a desire to be rid of Isabella's weight, mixed with sadness. The others in the room, feeling the pressure, agreed with nods. I miss the times when us and our parents were here. We need a positive atmosphere, she said. And there was a longing for freedom in her words. The sisters carefully planned their departure so that it would be swift and unwavering. After packing their bags, they left the Cooper home determined to start a new chapter of their lives, leaving behind pain and resentment. The weight of Isabella's influence gradually eased as the sisters found solace in freedom, building their futures on their own terms. Victoria, you're pursuing your career now, and that's great, Chloe soothed during a late-night conversation. We made the right choice. Our happiness is important, and we're not going to let Isabella dictate how we live our lives. Independence, though it brought hardship, brought the sisters even closer together. Chloe, discovering her passion for art, shared her dreams on live tea. I want to create something beautiful that reflects our resilience. Her eyes read determination, and the decision to leave a toxic environment allowed Chloe and Victoria to redefine their personalities. Past scars began to heal, opening up new horizons. The strength they gained during their escape became the foundation for future challenges on their journey of self-discovery and healing. Years later, Victoria and Chloe gingerly agreed to spend the vacations with their father, hoping the time had eased the tension associated with Isabella. But the reunion was overshadowed during Thanksgiving dinner when Isabella's resentment reappeared. Victoria tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy. "Daddy, it's been a long time since we've gotten together. It's time for a family reunion." She chose her words carefully so as not to rekindle the dormant conflict. Isabella, however, did not hide her annoyance. "Family? You left family when you left," she replied with contempt in her voice. Chloe, sensing the reproach in Isabella's words, whispered quietly to Victoria, "We did the right thing in leaving. Maybe we should have stayed away," wondered the sisters, feeling torn between the desire to maintain family unity and the reality of the pain Isabella continued to bring. This difficult decision came with the realization that they could not continue to tolerate the hostility. "Let's leave," Victoria suggested, and Chloe, feeling the same need, nodded in agreement. As they left the Cooper house, they felt the cold air of the night carrying a mixture of relief and disappointment. "I thought things would change," Chloe said disappointedly. "But Isabella's hatred won't subside. We've done all we can, Chloe." "It's not in our power to change that," Victoria consoled her. The uninvited holidays reminded them that the wounds from Isabella had not yet healed. "Perhaps someday things will change, but right now we must focus on our happiness," Victoria said firmly. This uninvited vacation was a lesson to the sisters, to put their own well-being above illusions of family harmony. Rallying around their father's deteriorating health, Victoria and Chloe offered him the support he so desperately needed while maintaining the bond that had become their comfort. But even in that moment, Isabella's shadow remained an unspoken tension between them. One evening, as their father's health began to deteriorate, Victoria gently brought it up. "Dad, we want to make sure you're comfortable. Do you need anything?" she asked with concern, love in her eyes. Bruce, looking at them gratefully, replied, "Having both of you here with me is all I need. You've been my support throughout this time." Chloe, barely holding back tears, whispered, "We love you, Daddy." As the inevitable approached, their father opened up to them, expressing his regrets for the decisions he'd made. "I never wanted to bring discord into your lives. Isabella was a mistake, and I'm sorry," he admitted, his voice sounding like a fragile whisper. The disclosure of the will was a critical moment, promising to bring both closure and vindication. Sitting with her father's attorney, Victoria and Chloe exchanged glances as he began to read the document. Isabella tensed when she heard the words, "To my beloved daughters, Victoria and Chloe, I leave my trust fund in the amount of $1 million. Chloe covered her mouth with her hand in bewilderment, and Victoria, though surprised, felt an inner approval. Isabella, on the other hand, was alarmed. "What is this?" "It must be a mistake," she exclaimed, her voice piercing the room with disbelief. Victoria, remaining calm, replied, "It's not a mistake, Isabella. Papa wanted to secure our future." The house, however, had been bequeathed to Isabella, a bitter pill for the sisters, but they found comfort in the fact that their father's love and regret was expressed through more than material possessions. When Isabella accused the sisters of manipulation, claiming they had forced him to change his will, Victoria responded with dignity, "We didn't manipulate anyone. It was my father's decision," his way of recognizing that we had been mistreated. In a letter left to his daughters, Bruce expressed his pride and regret. "I am sorry for the pain I have caused you." These words captured in the letter were an important reminder to Victoria and Chloe that their father loved them and was sorry for their, even despite the tumultuous times they endured. It gave them extra reassurance that they had done the right thing in pursuit of their own happiness and independence. "You both deserved better," Those words from their father's letter echoed in Victoria and Chloe's hearts. They found in them not only an end to years of uncertainty and struggle, but also an emotional release. Isabella's unsuccessful attempts to get a piece of the trust fund only confirmed their newfound strength. The revelation they had found was the final conclusion to a chapter of their lives overshadowed by Isabella's shadow. As they left the lawyer's office, Victoria and Chloe felt their sisterly bond grow even stronger, and their mutual resilience the result of years of trials. Victoria turned to Chloe and said, "Dad may not have been perfect, but he left us the opportunity to build a future without the shadows of the past. Let's do something to make him proud of us." Those words and revelation were the catalyst for a new chapter in their lives. Victoria and Chloe walked forward, carrying their father's love in their hearts and recognizing the scars they had received. They were ready to build their future based on their own values and dreams. So, with renewed strength and confidence, the sisters stepped forward, ready to face whatever the future would bring, knowing that they could rely on each other and on the strength of their bonds that had been tested but not broken.